Hey, everybody, welcome to another edition of The Drop. Greg Wyshynski, Arda Öcal here with you every Tuesday and Thursday, wherever you get your audio podcasts, as well as the NHL on ESPN YouTube. Slowed things down just a little bit during the holiday season, but that doesn't mean we don't have some great episodes for you, including this one. As you can see, Wish is wearing the hat. This episode is all about the Winter Classic. The 2024 edition.
And it's a hat from the Winter Classic that was played at Notre Dame. A really fun event. It's a flannel hat, which I've already come to realize might have been a mistake indoors. My head is very hot, but I'm going to keep it on because it's the gimmick.
Thank you for doing that. Commit to the bit. It is the 15th edition of the Winter Classic. We've got a special Winter Classic trivia coming up a little bit later with Mike Commito, who is a hockey historian. He's got a book out. We'll talk about that as well. That's happening later. So the 2024 edition is a really cool vibe to it, a nice fun battle between the expansion teams, between the Golden Knights and the Kraken. It will be in Seattle at T-Mobile Park, the home of the Mariners. It'll be on January 1st, as is custom. But we decided, you know what? Let's talk about the Winter Classic. Let's have a Winter Classic-centric episode. This happens every year, Wish. This is number 15. I would love to gauge your vibe as somebody who's been covering hockey for a very long time, has seen tentpole events like this come and go. This one obviously has stood the test of time for now, over a decade. Where is your interest level on the Winter Classic today?
Well, I think it's kind of morphed and changed a little bit in the sense of like it used to be a real curiosity, a real spectacle. The novelty of seeing a hockey game played in Wrigley Field, for example, or something like that. I think the early part of the Winter Classic was simply hockey outdoors and then hockey in place where I know of to be another sports place. And that lasted for about 5 or 6 years. And then, they started doing all these Stadium Series games and a couple of Heritage Classic games, and the novelty of being outdoors kind of subsided. Then, once you run through a bunch of these iconic venues, then now you're playing games in, storied Target Field in Minnesota, places like that, T-Mobile Park in Seattle. Here's where I think it is right now. I think it's a cool annual thing to have on the first day of the year. You can mix in the Winter Classic with your college football consumption as you're recovering from your hangover. Here's some hockey. But I think for the most part, much like the Stadium Series, Arda, it has become this wonderful gathering place for fans in a geographic area. I mean, you're packing 40,000 fans. In the case of some places, 70,000 fans into a place. And it becomes sort of like the All-Star game. It's less about what you're watching on the ice as it is gathering everybody together, a group of like-minded people, a big family reunion of hockey fans, and you go and watch a game outdoors and tailgate your behinds off.
I love it. And I agree 100%. And actually, I compare it to the All-Star game because I know we always have the conversation about the location of the All-Star game. The players would rather it be in a warmer location or a more fun location, things like that. The Winter Classic can really be a reward for fan bases. It can really be anywhere, any city in the NHL. And I feel like I'm happy with that vibe. Exactly what you described. I'm very happy with that vibe. Another question I have, though, are we getting to the point where I don't feel this necessarily yet because I think that I'm okay with the traveling circus vibe of the Winter Classic, but are you exhausted with the locations? Like, are we expecting too much? Are we always hoping and demanding more and more and more unique, fascinating in terms of venues and locations for the Winter Classic? Where are we on that?
I think the ratio has changed. I mean, think about the first few Winter Classics, right? Ralph Wilson Stadium at Buffalo, obviously, they just needed to hold it someplace, and that place was cold and snowy, and it was cool. But then you go Wrigley Field, Fenway Park, Heinz Field in Pittsburgh, the Citizens Bank Park in Philly, and then Michigan Stadium for that epic showdown, which I'm sure we're going to talk about in a few minutes. Um, like of the first six or so, you have at least three or four iconic locations, right? So I think the ratio now is maybe you get one iconic location every 5 games. We went from like Notre Dame to the Cotton Bowl. Those are two in a row that are iconic. And then we went to Target Field, which is the opposite. Then we went
Hmm.
back to Fenway. Now we're at T-Mobile Park. As long as they sprinkle in some places that are unique, I think it's going to be okay. I think it'll keep our interest. They just can't go generic cookie cutter baseball stadium every year. But there are still a few on the table, Arda. I mean, we're talking about places like Lambeau Field, we've not
Oh yeah.
done.
Oh yeah.
Happy Valley, between the Flyers and the Penguins, we've not done at Penn State. There are a few that are still on the table, and obviously the NHL, more than anything, through the at least the Stadium Series, has shown that they can make ice anywhere. So
And
there's lots
and
still on the table.
once we can winterize it, the shoe in Columbus.
Oh yeah, we didn't even talk about that. I mean, that's one that's sort of been on the table for a while, and that would be epic. And that kind of speaks to the thing we were just talking about. What a moment for Columbus hockey, even if the Blue Jackets suck, and based on recent events, they probably will. Like it's still going to be an amazing time for everybody in that
Oh
community
yeah.
to come together and celebrate Ohio State, celebrate hockey in Ohio, go and boo either the Penguins or the Red Wings, whoever shows up as the opponent. I mean, that would be epic. And again, that's the best part about this, the enthusiasm of people traveling to a thing, being with all your friends, you're 80,000 strong, and just celebrating the whole thing for a day. It really, I know a lot of people think the bloom's off the rose for this, but I love the Winter Classic.
Nah, I think it's a destination. I think it's among the most, how do I put this? Other than seeing your team in a visiting arena, like just, oh, I want to go to Florida and watch my team on a road trip, or I want to go to Vegas, the Winter Classic remains one of those
Yeah.
destination spots for fans to travel to, even if their teams are not playing.
And
So it's absolutely necessary as part of the calendar every year.
a few shout outs. Shout out to NBC, the former rights holder of the NHL, which was a driving force in getting the Winter Classic to become a thing. They needed programming on January 1st. They didn't have a bunch of college football games. They said, "How about a hockey outdoor game?" The NHL's like, "Hey, we've been thinking about that too." Shout out to John Collins, who you're going to hear from later, the COO of the NHL at that point, who was a driving force behind the scenes, convincing people this could work. And shout out to Steve Mayer, our friend, who a friend of the drop, who has been the creative force behind the outdoor games that we've seen through the years. For example, like all the accoutrement, the big boot that you saw at the Cotton Bowl and things like that. I mean, that's Steve Mayer. They went back to Fenway because Steve Mayer hadn't gotten a chance to really do his thing at that venue, and the second time around, it looked so much cooler. So there's a lot of people behind the scenes that have made this thing as iconic as it is, and it's been a really cool thing for the NHL for sure.
Yeah, Steve Mayer is a very creative guy. And actually, Fenway last year is a perfect example of what I would love the Winter Classic to have every single year. Like it felt unique, it felt appropriate to the venue itself. And if that was the case every year, I would definitely look forward to how they dress
Oh,
up the venue in that way. It's great.
and we should say also that I think that, the NHL outdoor games used to get mocked, rightfully so, for repeating the same teams over and over and over and over again. The Blackhawks being in the game every year, like basically Stadium Series or Winter Classic. The Flyers would be in it every year. The Penguins. A lot of these teams were used over and over again. In the last few seasons, in the Winter Classic in particular, Nashville versus Dallas, St. Louis versus Minnesota. Now we've got the Knights and the Kraken. Like they've also gotten a little bit more adventurous with the teams that they're allowing in this signature event. Anyone get a Stadium Series, except for like the Coyotes and the Panthers. But but like it's still really hard to get a Winter Classic, and I was really heartened to see the NHL get a little bit more adventurous in their locations and also in their participants, which has to happen, I think, for this event to stay relevant.
Let's talk favorite and least favorite winter classics. I'll start. My favorite, it has a personal connection, but also the visual was incredible. 2014 Ann Arbor, the Big House, Leafs and Red Wings. The visual of 100,000 people. If you see the aerial shot, it might be one of my favorite pictures in sports. It looks like a perfect separation of fans wearing blue versus fans wearing red on opposite sides of the stadium, and it's not photoshopped. That's just how it happened, and it was just an incredible look. Now, the personal connection here is I was actually working in weather at the time. So I was with the Weather Network, which is like the Weather Channel in the States. That's the Canadian version. And it was a weather event because the play actually stopped every 2 minutes
Yep.
for extra shoveling. So it
Yeah.
was kind of cool that there was like this weather event to it. There was like the elements were playing a factor, etc. So it was just an overall great vibe. People were having a great time, and it was just a sea of humanity, as Gorilla Monsoon would say. My
And all, but also like it was also me. One of the great things about the Winter Classic or any of these outdoor games is how meaningful it is to the players because, it does harken back to the Canadian cliche, the boys on the pond and they're playing puck and then they come inside and have mom's hot cocoa kind of thing. Like it's just a stupid cliche thing, but the players do appreciate how it links it back to the way they grew up playing the game in many cases before climate change. Now there's no ice. So that's part of it. They love being able to be there with their families. They love the swag they get for being a part of the game, all the cool Winter Classic stuff like the hat I'm wearing right now. But the Big House, the Michigan game, was in that special class of Winter Classics where they are legit excited to be in that environment. Sometimes they go to these games and it's like, well, I just want to be able that I can make sure I can wear eye black and be able to see the puck and yada yada yada. But being in the Big House and knowing what the environment was going to be, I remember the lead up to it. That was the thing, is playing in that venue, and that was what made that really special.
So it was cold in 2014, but it was much colder in 2022, which I will pick as the least favorite, not because the game was bad. This is Minnesota. This is Target Field. But I can tell you the players themselves, and in particular, one of the funniest stories that I've heard at my time at ESPN was from Hillary Knight. We've worked with her extensively, especially on Hockey International shows, you and I wish. She tells a great story about waiting to be introduced during this game. They were going to introduce the women's U.S.
Olympic
national
team,
hockey
yeah.
team, but they were waiting during a commercial break, and they weren't waiting indoors. They were in position outside. And so to have to wait through the commercial break in this blistering, like beyond freezing weather, not the best. Not the best moment for
No.
the national team, just waiting there, freezing their butts off while they're waiting for the commercial break to end. It just makes me laugh that just the visual of them. So for
Well, I
that
mean,
reason, I'm picking worst.
I mean, you did have players showing up to that event, if memory serves, wearing like swimwear, right? The Stadium
Oh
Series
gosh.
started the tradition of teams creating outfits to enter the venue in. I think that was probably a Stadium Series invention, and then it spilled over to the Winter Classic.
Love
Again,
it.
another charming part of the NHL outdoor game lore, the fact that these guys are like, there's a point person in the locker room that's like, boys, what are we going to wear to this to the gala?
Love it.
It's just like,
Love it.
great.
The
Great.
Bruins and the Red Sox, they nailed it. Like
Yep.
even the Pittsburgh and the Pirates, they nailed it. Anyhow.
And that outdoor game that they had in Nashville, where they were doing like outlaw biker jackets and stuff like that. It's dope. I love it. I love it.
What are yours?
For me, my favorite is 2020, the Cotton Bowl. I was at the Big House. I acknowledge its greatness. I acknowledge the importance of the game at Ralph Wilson Stadium. You never forget your first time. But the Cotton Bowl for me was the epitome of what this event can do, which is hockey in a place you don't expect it. Hockey in a place where people are craving the chance to all get together to celebrate the sport, to celebrate their teams. 85,000 people come to the Cotton Bowl for this game. Second largest crowd they've had in the history of the Winter Classic. The accoutrement Steve Mayer created, the giant cowboy boot, what pig races, I think it was, or some such. And then the game itself was incredible. Maybe one of my favorite games we've had outdoors, the Corey Perry walk of shame for the hit on Ryan Ellis in the first period, which has been memed to death in recent weeks for reasons we won't rehash. Um, 4 unanswered goals by the Dallas Stars to beat the Predators after Nashville took a 2-0 lead in the first period. The second intermission had a tribute to the State Fair of Texas, including a rodeo show. Outside of the venue was a midway with games and all kinds of food and stuff, which is a little too crowded, but a good idea nonetheless. The jerseys both ruled. You've often referenced the gloves the Dallas Stars wore that day. Just my favorite time, man. Like everything I want from an outdoor game in a positive sense, as far as the fan interaction and the sense of community was encapsulated by that event. I loved it. My least favorite is the antithesis of that event, which is the 2018 Winter Classic at Citi Field. What a soulless money grab, garbage game that whole thing was. For those who don't remember, in 2018, it was the 10th anniversary of the Winter Classic. The Rangers wanted to hold their game outdoors at West Point. It's still something that they've tried to do, couldn't pull it together. That didn't happen. The backup plan was Yankee Stadium. That was booked for the Pinstripe Bowl, so that couldn't happen. So it was off to the storied home of my New York Mets, Citi Field, which again is a great baseball stadium, but has absolutely no sense of history whatsoever, and few fans feel connections to it. The Sabres, who are the opponent in that game, they wanted the game back in Buffalo for the 10th anniversary of the Ralph Wilson Stadium game. Problem being, the 2018 World Junior Championships were going to have an outdoor game a few weeks earlier. The NHL said we don't want 2 outdoor games in the same city, sort of in close proximity to each other time-wise, so Buffalo couldn't have the game there. Please recall, Arda, that in order to maintain the tax-exempt status of the Rangers' home arena, Madison Square Garden, the Rangers were the designated away team in a game played at the home of the New York Mets against the team from Western New York. It was stupid. It was freezing, 20 degrees outside. No buzz for this game, no atmosphere for this game. Arda, the Buffalo Sabres basically wore their white jerseys for this game with a few extra stripes placed on it. I cannot tell you how disappointed I was in this event. I cannot tell you how much I feel it was the nadir of the Winter Classic run. Stadium Series, it may have been fine. Winter Classic, it was stupid.
So you're on the fence.
It was a 50-50 proposition as to whether or not I would make that my least favorite.
So those are our favorites and least favorites. But what about the first? You talked about Buffalo. It was Ralph Wilson Stadium. It was just over 15 years ago. And you have prepared us something for the occasion, Wish. Tell us about it.
Yeah, it was an incredible moment for the league. And I wanted to kind of take a look back at the difficulties, the obstacles, the questions that people had leading up to that game. And also get some memories from one of the game's most important players. So here's a little mini doc about the first Winter Classic back in 2008. The first Winter Classic was held on January 1st, 2008 at Ralph Wilson Stadium in Buffalo. That's quite a long time ago, as I regretfully had to inform Sidney Crosby of the Pittsburgh Penguins. I don't want to make you feel old.
No. Oh, I've had a lot of that today, so I'm
sure,
good.
Yeah, I saw you.
Sorry, too late.
I don't want to make you feel old, but it's been 15 years since the first Winter Classic. I think the first Winter Classic is one of the more underrated signature moments in Sidney Crosby's legendary career. Like, it wasn't the golden goal, it wasn't lifting the Stanley Cup 3 times, but what it was that indelible memory we have from the first event of Sidney Crosby scoring that shootout goal, winning the game for the Penguins against the Sabres, and looking like it was a scene captured inside of a snow globe.
Just coming out of the tunnel and just, you had no idea. Like, I've never come through a football tunnel and experienced what those guys would see on, a weekly basis or whatever it is. But, I think that, seeing a hockey rink in the middle of a football stadium, packed, just loud, snow coming down, it's like this perfect mix between, like, hockey being pure outside combined with, playing the NHL and your dream of playing the NHL. So, it was just so incredible. And still, we've played in other ones, but nothing matches that feel coming out of Buffalo.
Hockey fans know that there's only one miracle on ice, but there were some miraculous things to the first Winter Classic becoming a reality. And not just because the ice crew had to fix divots every 3 minutes of gameplay like it was some kind of polo match. Off the ice, there were a lot of challenges to this thing becoming a reality. Now, John Collins was the COO of the NHL at the time, and I recently caught up with him at a press conference for the Stadium Series at MetLife to talk about the humble beginnings of the Winter Classic.
I think from really the moment that Gary gave it a go-ahead, there were hurdles all the way through this thing from could we get a sponsor? Could we sell 80,000 tickets? And then there were hockey operational concerns. Like, okay, if the weather's bad, what's an official game? Is it like baseball? Right? Like, how many do we have to play 2 periods? Like, we don't have those rules. What if the wind is really bad? How do we adjust?
All right, let me give you a little bit of an origin story about the Winter Classic. January 1st in the U.S. is College Football Day. Except NBC didn't really have a slate of games like its competitors did. What NBC did have starting in 2005 was the NHL. So, President of Programming John Miller saw an opportunity to program something other than figure skating and dog shows on New Year's Day. Miller and Collins started to work together on the concept of an outdoor hockey game on January 1st. As Collins recalled, the initial concept was to piggyback off of one of sport's greatest city rivalries.
The original thought was do it at Yankee Stadium, do it at the old Yankee Stadium, have it be the Rangers and the Bruins, and now we're talking about Buffalo. And it's a little different.
After the Rangers and Bruins didn't work, Buffalo stepped up to be the host of the Winter Classic. The problem was finding someone who wanted to play Buffalo. They asked every division rival, every geographic rival. They got no across the board until they came to the Pittsburgh Penguins. As Collins recalls it, David Morehouse had just become CEO of the team, and he was, quote, a very forward-thinking guy. So he offered up the Penguins as the opponent of the Buffalo Sabres in the Winter Classic. And as for Buffalo, any concerns about them as a venue was blown away like a snowdrift after they got a look at the fans.
That New Year's Eve, that New Year's Day was unbelievable, right? And then, then the game was incredible. And that fan base was, they treated it like it was any other big event, AFC Championship game, right? It was like the same crowd. They were tailgating, and they had the shirts off, and painted chests, and it was amazing.
The Winter Classic had its challenges, and it had its skeptics. But Collins said the opposition was never fierce enough where he was concerned the game wouldn't happen.
On the inside, you were having to meet the challenge or you were holding your breath, but I don't think it was ever really a question that it wouldn't come off. I mean, I give a lot of credit to Gary for, having the guts to see the vision and support the vision, because there were a lot of moments where I'm sure there was complaining from other parts of the organization, the NHL generally. There probably were some doubts that this was, ultimately something that would turn out to be 37 sold-out games, right? Not just a gimmick.
But what does Sidney Crosby think about the first Winter Classic when he thinks back to that event?
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, I think we just I didn't see it playing out that way. I thought it might be just like a one-time deal, and then to see the way it went, and to see it continually get this, the attention that it gets and have the impact that it has. They're fun. I mean, I don't know what our record is. I'd like it to be a little bit better in those, but the first one was incredible.
All right, 14 Winter Classic games, another one coming up. Plenty of history here. So we decided, you know what? Why don't we call the hockey historian to come on to the show and give us a little bit of a trivia contest. It's normally hockey fans would know M versus W. Now it's A versus W. So we're going to go head to head, Wish. All right, buddy. We're going to do a little trivia battle with our good friend, Mike Commito. He's got a book out, Leafs 365, which I'm excited to dive into. Growing up a Leafs fan, I'm sure I'm going to learn a thing or two or 10. Before we get to the trivia contest, though, Mike, thanks for joining us on the show. And I'm curious, like, going through the process of learning everything you possibly can about the Toronto Maple Leafs, what was one fact, one tidbit that really, really shocked you and surprised you about the Leafs?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot, right? Because I think the way the book kind of structures itself, it's 365 moments in Leafs history, one for every day of the year. I go as far back as when the team joined the NHL in 1917, up to the most recent playoff run. I actually had to get the publisher to let me sneak in that win against Tampa Bay, yeah, kind of in the last minute because we were in the final proofing stages. So they reluctantly agreed, and I was able to include that in there. But I mean, there's been a lot of different moments, I think, over the years. One that had kind of shocked me, and again, it is a story that I think a lot of Leaf fans and maybe a lot of hockey fans know. But when I was doing the research for the book, just because of the time in which I was born, I didn't get to experience this player when he was with the Leafs. Was the story about Brian Spencer, and there's a book about Spencer, and there's I believe a documentary as well, but when I was kind of doing the research for the book, I used a great database, and one of the days that I kind of looked at, including him in, was it said that on this day, Brian Spencer scored his first NHL point. So I just kind of put that into my rubric, and then I continued on with the research. And then when I got to that story, when I started to write and do the research, I noticed that in the lead up to that game, Spencer was considering not playing in that game because his father has passed away, and at the time I was not aware of Brian Spencer in a story. I did a little bit more research, and what I uncovered, which again, it's not exactly a pick-me-up story around the holidays, but his father, a couple nights earlier, they lived in Prince George, British Columbia, where there was only one TV station, and I guess Brian had made it onto Hockey Night in Canada, but the Prince George TV station didn't broadcast that interview, and so he went to the station armed, and he was very upset with the TV personnel there. They ended up calling the RCMP, and then as he was attempting to leave the station, he got into a firefight with the RCMP and he died. He was shot and killed by the RCMP. So it was an awful story that, again, now that you know Brian Spencer's name, if you were to look him up online, you would see all of this, right? But at the time, I kind of just went in, just pulling names off of different databases, and he ultimately ended up having a tragic life as well, obviously having to deal with that. But then after he left pro hockey, he struggled with substance abuse. He was also killed in a robbery gone wrong,
Oh my God,
at a very early age. So awful story. I mean, it's unfortunate that's the one that I think of when you ask that question, but simply because it was, to me, as somebody who didn't grow up watching Brian Spencer, and I hadn't stumbled upon that great book about his life before I started doing the book, it really kind of threw me for a loop.
Look, it's 365 things about the Leafs. We know it's not going to be all sunshine and rainbows.
Yeah. That is true.
I mean, that's wild, though. I mean, if that's what you're bringing to us here on the podcast, then it's definitely a book worth picking up. Wow, that's intense, Mike. Speaking of intensity, we have a trivia contest to get to. Wish and I are going to battle. I don't know if the RCMP
hit the transition, baby.
I don't know if the RCMP will need to be called for us here on Zoom. I think we're going to be okay as we're distanced for this. But if we were in person, man, we needed extra reinforcements. That's for sure. So the way this is going to work is Mike has prepared for us 3 questions each about the Winter Classic, and if necessary, a tiebreaker. So Mike, I'm going to hand over the reins to you. You are our quizmaster, and thank you for doing this. And this will be a first here on the show, and I can't wait to win. Should we do promos? Like, should we get into the spirit? Like, do we get 15 seconds to jaw jack at our opponents before we get started?
Öcal, I'm here to tell you that you don't know squat about the Winter Classic. You're a Stadium Series guy. You're a Heritage Classic guy. More so that one because you're a stupid Canadian. But when it comes to Winter Classic, it's all about Wyshynski. When I'm done with you, you will be not recognizable. You will be on the mat. You will be crying for your family because I am going to be victorious. I hate you. You are a mean person, and I dislike you, and I find your odor offensive.
Yes.
There we go.
I find your odor offensive.
Good. It's already good.
We did it.
I appreciate you guys entrusting me with this. I've never been a quiz master before.
Oh.
I don't do a ton of trivia, so this is either going to be, the questions are either be too easy or they're going to be too hard. There's no in between, but I'm looking forward to seeing how you guys do.
In fairness, neither did Mayim Bialik, and she hosted Jeopardy for like 3 weeks, so that's exciting. So you guys are akin. Arda, you can go first. You're
All right, I go first. There it
You're
is.
higher in the alphabet than I am in both ways. First and
Reverse
last name.
psychology. See, I win. Correct. Let's go.
Okay, so let's go. So the first question, counting this year's venue, have there been more Winter Classics played at baseball stadiums or football stadiums?
Oh, shoot.
Ooh, I want to say baseball stadiums.
That is correct.
Baseball
yeah. 10 at baseball stadiums, 7 at football stadiums, 4 at college venues, and 3 at NFL venues.
Wow. All right. There you go. There you go. All right. Fair enough.
1-0. Okay. Let's go.
Okay. All right, Greg, you're up with the number 2 spot. So the Blackhawks have been in 4 Winter Classics and have lost them all. Can you name one of the other 2 teams that have appeared in multiple Winter Classics without a win?
Yeah, that's got to be the without a win. Multiple Winter Classics with a win. Because I thought it was okay. Well, it's not the Penguins because they played the Blackhawks at one point, didn't they? The Sabres?
Yes, the Sabres are one of them. The other one is Philly.
All right, yeah.
Here we go.
The Sabres were in that the terrible Winter Classic I talked about before, but of course the first Winter Classic, which was a great one, and they lost that one too.
Yeah, you got it. So now we're 1-1. Okay, so Arda, number 3. When the Canadians played the Bruins at Gillette Stadium in 2016, they accomplished what feat? This is one of those juicy questions.
What? When the Canadians what? When the Canadians played the Bruins, at Foxborough, they won, so that's a feat. Well, can you be more specific?
I'm thinking more along the lines of venues and geographic areas, let's say.
Oh, okay.
Venues and geographic areas. What feat? Like,
This is where I get fired as Quizmaster. Maybe.
I'm trying to think of like what record did they break a record? Like something about like the Habs beating the Bruins in Boston, but that can't be a record. Does that, like, do you know what I mean? Like what?
Yeah. It's not necessarily a record. It's more of a general, very vague accomplishment.
It's got to be some random stat like most goals in the third period or something like that, or like some stat. I don't know. I'm stumped.
Okay, well, they became the first NHL team to play outdoor games in both Canada and the United States because, of course, their Heritage Classic in 2003, 2011.
Okay. All right. Good one. Good one.
You didn't get it right, but I think ultimately that was a very good trivia nugget for the listeners.
Yes.
So my favorite part about it was you not getting it right.
Yes, exactly. That's the best part because now you have a chance to steal. Good job.
Yeah. Okay, so now, Greg, this is a chance for you to pull ahead here. So who holds the record for the most points in a single Winter Classic performance?
It's got to be a high-scoring game, and there aren't many of those. Claude Giroux?
No, it was Jordan Kyrou. Last in 2022, the Blues beat the Wild 6-4. He got 4 points, 2 goals, 2 assists.
You know, that makes sense because I didn't even watch that one.
I didn't even watch that. I wasn't even there.
Okay, so we're still even. Moving on to number 5. So 65 different players have scored in the Winter Classic since 2008. There are 2 players who hold the lead for the most goals in Winter Classic games. So career Winter Classic goals. Can you name one of them?
Can I name one of the players that scored the most goals in Winter Classic?
Somebody who was like a Mr. Winter Classic as far as scoring a lot of times in the Winter Classic.
Patrick Kane?
No, Patrick Kane is not one of them.
Is it a Blackhawk?
No.
Wow.
Is it Sid?
No,
he didn't score actually a lot of goals now in these Winter Classic games.
One of them is I think is surprising. One I think makes sense because they're obviously a noted goal scorer. But if Tarasenko, each of these 2 guys only has 3 goals total in Winter Classic. So Tarasenko has 3 goals, and Eric Fair has 3 goals as
Oh,
well.
That's what I was thinking of.
Eric.
Eric
Yeah.
Fair was the guy they were like Mr. Winter Classic
Yeah.
because inexplicably he'd always used to score goals. Shoot, man.
Eric.
Yeah.
All right.
2 in 2011 and another one when they played in 2015.
So this one to win, Wish, you can
This
win
is
here.
for the win. All right, here we go.
Okay, so for the win, there have only been 2 penalty shots in Winter Classic history. Can you name either of the shooters?
Oh my God. Is that Giroux?
No.
Oh, do I have it
Wow.
reversed? Was it Zuccarello?
No.
Who was it?
So the first one was Briere for the Flyers in 2012.
Damn it, that's who I was thinking of. I knew it was a
You
flyer.
were on the right track. It was a Flyer. 19.6 seconds left in the game. Flyers were down 3-2. He had the game on his stick. Lundqvist saved it. And then most recently, Gurianov in 2020 at the Winter Classic against the Preds.
Yeah.
And he missed.
I knew that there was a flyer taking a penalty shot, but I couldn't remember that it was Danny Briere, current GM of your Philadelphia Flyers. All right,
All right,
tiebreaker time.
Mike, you have a tiebreaker. We'll just shout out the answer, Wish,
Okay.
if we got it. All right.
Okay. This is the most Mike Commito tiebreaker I could come up with in the spirit of Hockey 365. So before the Winter Classic in 2008, NHL teams had obviously played outdoor games before. Do you know where the Red Wings played an outdoor game in 1954?
Prison. In a prison. Let's go. Victory. Woo! Let's go. They had a whole trophy created for the occasion. They mixed and matched the honey pot. They mixed and matched with the prisoners in Michigan. Tell me if I got the story right. So the general manager at the time, was it Sid Abel? I think it was at the time. And Ted Lindsay, a couple of the players did a public appearance, and the warden of the prison was there. This was the summer before this happened. And basically the warden said, hey, if we raise enough money, if we create a rink, it's almost like a field of dreams for hockey. Mm-hmm. If we create a rink, if we build it, will you come? And haphazardly, just sort of like, without thinking twice about it, GM says, yeah, sure, we'll show up. And lo and behold, the warden creates the rink, finds the funds. And so the GM's like, well, I guess we got to show up now. So Gordie Howe, Terry Sawchuk, all the star players of the Red Wings play in this game. And according to urban legend, after the first period, it was 19-0. So they just switched players. So the inmate that was playing center for the prisoners team is now centering Gordie Howe and Ted Lindsay. And now they're just mixing and matching teams. So it's a crazy story.
It's the real longest yard, right? I guess they realize that you probably shouldn't keep running up these score on these violent criminals, and they realize that let's have more fun with this game than just trying to run up the numbers, right? So,
Mike, my answer is Saskatoon. Did Arda get it right?
Yes.
There probably was wasn't that the era where they were doing those exhibition games in the Maritimes, before the season started, just to make money? The towns would pay NHL teams to play games.
Mike, was Ken Hitchcock part of that prison game in some way, shape, or form?
Yeah.
No. I remember him talking about it at some point. I don't know if he was a part of it or not, but anyways, wild times indeed.
Yeah.
So I win. Let's go.
You do. You are victorious.
I'm the champion. Greg Wyshynski, you sit there, you eat it, because I am the world champion of drop trivia.
There's a part of me that's like a little surprised you don't have a Winter Classic belt somewhere in your hovel over there. But congratulations, Arda, on being trivia master of the Winter Classic. I will get you at the Stadium Series, sir.
Yeah, when we do the Stadium Series trivia, that'll be your revenge. So Leafs 365, where can people pick up the book, Mike?
You can get it wherever you like to buy books. So again, if you have a favorite independent bookseller, you can get it from there. If they don't have it, they'll order it in from you. Otherwise, Amazon, Chapters Indigo in Canada, Barnes & Noble, or where you live to buy books in the States, it's available there as well.
Awesome.
Thanks for joining us, Mike. This was fun.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Take care.
All right, that about does it for us here on the special Winter Classic edition of The Drop. Enjoy the game between Seattle and Vegas, happening in Seattle on January 1st, 2024. You can look forward to listening to this show every Tuesday and Thursday, wherever you get your audio podcasts, as well as the NHL on ESPN YouTube. That's it for us. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you on the next one.
Happy New Year, everybody.